Hey homies, what's up? Ryan Wynn here with another episode of Running Laps, the Procreate time-lapse series where I take a sketchbook snapshot of something I've drawn and inked and drop it into Procreate and get to coloring. In this case, I'm doing one of my sketchbook covers, or not sketchbook cover, I'm sorry, sketch cover. This is a Divinity 1 sketch cover from the first Divinity series from Valiant Comics. I was the inker on the series. It was written by Matt Kint, penciled by Trevor Hairsine, inked by me, as I just said, colored by my good friend David Barron, and lettered by a great letterer named Dave Lanphier. If you're not familiar with Divinity, you don't have to really know anything about the Valiant universe. Even though it's tied to it, it's sort of a self-contained story about this brand new character they created just for the series. I won't get too spoilery, but it's he's a Russian cosmonaut, and his story starts in the 60s during the space race. And he is flung far out into space. He finds a being that gives him godlike powers, which is interesting because he's a communist, and they don't believe in things like that. So it's already right there. There's an interesting dynamic. So he's given godlike powers, and he is brought back to Earth. And he lands current year in Australia. And the Unity team, which is the 4 people in the background, they don't know what to do with him, basically, because he's not malevolent. He's a benevolent being, and he basically just wants to give people what they want, which is an interesting take on a not quite a superhero, but it sort of has superhero aspects. I used to kind of think of it as Matt took the basic superhero tropes and sort of jazzed them up. And in jazz, you'll slow down measures or you'll expand measures and beats and play off chords and expand things like that, and just you'll rearrange the things that are already written sometimes. And that's sort of what it felt like he was doing. It felt like he was playing jazz with this script. So you'll notice, or you may have noticed, that it didn't start with a blank inked black and white image like I normally start with. There was some sort of problem with Procreate. It happens very rarely. I think in the 2 years I've been playing with digital art on my iPad with Procreate, it's maybe happened 3-4 times where the video only recorded partway through. So it kind of missed the flatting out and the choosing of the colors and the levels that I was going to use. But I was still experimenting throughout anyways. As you can see here, still bouncing with like what time of day do I want to make it? How much light do I want there to be? I finally decided that I wanted there to be a lot of light, but not a lot of straight sunlight. So there's clouds in the background, but then there's maybe like an envelope of clouds above that, like high flying wispy clouds blocking out the sun, but letting a lot of light through. That helps them glow. And for some reason, I really wanted Divinity here in the foreground, Abram Adams. I really wanted him to be dark. I was really pushing him being a dark shadowed shape in the front. And I'll brighten him up as we go along, and you'll see that I'll brighten it up, and I'll bring it down and brighten it up. So also, let's talk about the other characters. Immediately to his right, the first closest character is the Eternal Warrior, and he's a great character. He's a classic Valiant character from the original run in the 90s, and I always want to call him the Eternal Warrior, and it's always at the worst times that I've almost said it and that I've said it, and that's talking to fans at conventions. And I'll just say it kind of passing by, where I'm talking about characters, and I'll say some blah, 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 and then the Ultimate Warrior does this or that, and everyone starts giggling, and I've got to think about, like, wait, why are they giggling? Oh, yeah, call them the Ultimate Warrior. And next to him is a character called Ninjak. And Ninjak is like a super 90s character. I mean, he was created in the 90s, but he's really cool, too. He's sort of like their Batman, I guess. He's part of MI5 or MI6, the British military intelligence service, sort of like a spy / assassin. So he's got all sorts of gadgets, and even though it looks like he's wearing cloth, it's all bulletproof and things like that. He's a really interesting character, and Matt did some interesting stuff with his story where he is actually Ninja K, where that's like a designation he's given in the intelligence service. So there's Ninja A, B, C, D, up to G, F, H, I, J, K, and beyond, all through the alphabet. So that was an interesting thing he did. And then also the team, the four of them in the background, they're, excuse me, they are Unity. And he said that they're called that because they're Unit Y. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting too. So the other two characters in the background, the girl on top of the sphere is Livewire. And she can do all sorts of interesting things where she can, connect to computers and recode things and do all that. But then she can also create like weapons. I forget what they're called, but she can create sort of like weapons and blast things, and she's fairly useful, as well as being an extremely competent, intelligent character with great leadership skills and a great background story. And then Exo Manowar is the Visigoth warrior from thousands of years ago that came into contact with this futuristic sci-fi suit that is basically a weapon of mass destruction all in its own. So they came after Divinity when he came back to Earth, and then Divinity Abram here in the foreground. And since he's not really someone who fights, like I said, he's benevolent as opposed to malevolent, and he sort of trips them out in part of the story and sends them mentally to like different places so they don't know where they are. They're not trying to physically fight him. And he tends to always have these glowing butterflies around him. So that's what I have going on in the image. So if you've read the story, you kind of know like, oh, this is the part where he's, forcing them to zone out and trip out. And Ninjak has to come to their rescue by sort of crossing the mental barriers as he was taught to by some monks years ago. And it was an interesting story. We had 3 follow-up series after this first one of 4 issues. There was Divinity 1, 2, and 3, and then a series called Eternity. It was 4 issues. So if you have any interest, go ahead and check those out. They were my favorite projects I've ever worked on. And right there, I hit the glow button basically, and got that glow I was going for, that saturated light coming through. I bring it down a little, bring it back up. I was really happy once I got this kind of orangey glow to it. And that's where we end it. All right, well, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and take it easy. And be sure to follow me on Twitter, @RyanWin, follow @DeanKotz on Twitter, and follow @Gods and Gears to stay up to date on our upcoming Alterna series, Gods and Gears. More on that in upcoming videos, and over on Twitter, also on Instagram. All right, take care. Thanks.